Hey everyone, it's Desiree, and I am here for Spellbinders again, showcasing one of the die sets out of the PA Scribe Collection by Paul Antonio. I am in love with this die set. It's one of those fancy frame dies, and you can see these are the dies that are in this set that's available. So you have the main outer, and then you have the inner that'll cut, and then you have another centerpiece, and then you have that accent. So these are the colors that I chose. This is going to be a 5x7 card, and you can see you have that centerpiece that goes in, and just the intricate cutouts that come from these dies. So I'm using the centerpiece, and I've cut this piece of vellum, and I didn't want to cut the inside out like I did with the pink frames. I wanted to keep that there because I want to emboss a sentiment within this. So I just used that center cutout and I marked it. I'm going to be using a sentiment from the Fun Stamper's Journey stamp set called Spread Love, and it says Happily Ever After. There was someone I was watching, Mary Polanco. She was using this die as well, and she created two really unique projects, and I think she said it best. This does remind me, for her I think she said Snow White, but this does remind me of one of those frames, one of the princess frames, maybe Cinderella, or one of those. So it made me giggle when I was able to finally sit down and watch some videos, get caught up when she said that. So I stamped it using my Versamark ink. I made sure I prepped it, especially on vellum. I'm using some rose gold embossing powder by Gina K, and I'm just going to use my heat tool. You want to make sure that your heat tool is nice and hot so that there is minimal warping onto the vellum, and it doesn't take long to heat emboss on the vellum, so it will go very quickly. I'm going to use one of my microfiber cloths just to clean off the extra powder. And now I'm going to adhere the frames. Now, when I was adhering this frame, I kind of went a little crooked, which is okay, and not so much crooked, but if I left it dry by itself, it would have curved up. I didn't set it correctly down onto the vellum, but that's okay. We keep going, we let it go, and we keep making our card. No card gets thrown away. We just keep improving on it. You know, those little mistakes that we make turn into happy accidents. So you can see right there is where I offset. I have a pinch in the cardstock, but that's okay. We're going to fix that because I have two more layers to put on this. I wanted the outer frame just to be raised just a little bit. So I'm adding two more layers of the cardstock. And then once I have all of those layers down, I will use some acrylic blocks to place on top of this, and that will help it to dry flat. It'll actually help me to flatten that out so that when I put it on my card base, it won't coil up. So again, my card base is a 5x7, so you would cut it 7x10 and then score along the long edge at the 5-inch mark. And then that will give you a nice 5x7 card base. It will be a side folding card base. So here come the blocks. Needed a lot of weight. It's good that acrylic blocks are heavy. And it did help. It actually did flatten my card out for me. So I was very happy with that. So we're going to do something a little bit different. Maybe, it's a different way. We create our cards, and by all means, we create them so that they'll sit up on a shelf and all of that. I love to add lots to my cards. So what I'm actually creating here is a tassel. So I'm using some organza ribbon and I'm using some twine, excuse me, and I'm just cutting those, and then I'm going to fold them in half, and then I'm going to use the same twine to tie a knot in the top. This is a process because we do wish that we had a third hand. At least I was at this point and was trying to figure out how I could get one. So I finally was able to get that knot up there. And then what I'm going to use is just a piece of cardstock. I'm going to cut that down, trim it, and I'm going to use that to wrap around the top of my tassel so that I have that wrap around. Now I could have also used the twine to wrap around to just give it that finished look. Now again, as I said before, you could, use your twine to wrap around it, and you don't need much of the paper. You want to keep that as close as you can to it, because if you wrap a lot of paper, and I probably used even a little bit more than what I should have, then you kind of have that band that's going to stick out. But that's pretty much what I'm creating here. I'm just actually creating the band for the top of the tassel with what I have. So all of these materials are just fine. You don't have to use a piece of metal. You can use wire if you wanted to. That will be fine as well. But again, we have all of these items in our stash, and there's just so much that we can make. So I'm going to set this down onto our card base. So now that that's dry, it did dry flat, so I was keeping my fingers crossed there. But even if it didn't, we would have figured it out. Absolutely. We keep going. As I said, we let it go. It's all right. Nobody's going to know that error is there unless you point it out. And you all know now because you're watching this. But no one's really going to see those small imperfections. So I'm now taking that centerpiece, and what's great with this die is it also does some embossing on the side as well. So you've got your cutouts, but if you look on that right and left side, you can see the embossed from the die that went into the cardstock. So I'm going to attach my tassel down onto the bottom. So I just wove it through the opening that was down there, and I just used a little piece of Scotch tape just to secure those ends there, so that they won't, fly around too much. I'm going to add a small glue dot so that the tassel will lay flat against this area. Because what I'm going to do, I noticed when I set my twine back there, okay, well, with what I was doing, we would see it. So we couldn't do that. So I'll actually cut another panel so that I can cover that up. But first I want to score just below the details at the top. So we're going to create like a door a little bit. I do apologize for my voice. My allergies are just kicking in, and my allergies do affect my throat. So I do apologize for that. So I have my second panel cut, and I'm going to adhere that just to cover that other side. I'm going to make sure, though, that I snip at the bottom where that tassel is, because I wanted to have that come up through. So just putting that small little cut there, I'm able to lift the tassel up so that it will hang down the way that I'm looking to. So I didn't lose any of the die that I cut. I just snipped into it, opened it up, and let that fall through. I'm going to glue the rest, the top part, together, and then once I know that's secured, I'm going to work that score line that I have on the one card and just get the other side to bend with that. When I apply my glue for the it's like a door hinge that we're creating here, I'm just going to make sure that, of course, that I put the glue towards the top, and then I'm going to set that over the sentiment that I have on the front of my card. And you can see that just rests really nice right in the center. It continues the design of the frame. And I am going to use a acrylic block just to make sure that that is set in place. I'm playing around with my tassel, giving it a little bit of a trim and trimming the ends of the ribbons on an angle just to give them some texture, interest in the way that they will fall. So yes, this does come past the card, but I'm okay with that because when it sits up, this tassel just extends to the front, and then that's kind of what they can use to open that front flap. So I'm sitting here playing with it for a while there, longer than probably I should have, but just to see how that mechanism's going to work. The flowers that I chose to add to the front are from the May 2019 card kit called Stay Wild. These are layering dies for this flower, and I used the same cardstock. I used ivory, and then for the top portion I used some worn lipstick, and I used my Nuvo brushes, and then for the greens I used bundled sage just to give it a little bit of shading. I didn't want too much, but just a little bit around the edges, and bundled sage added the perfect color to the green that I chose. Again, the same cardstock color was used for the flower, but just adding that worn lipstick across the top just makes it look like it's a different cardstock, but just gives it some shadows and some depth, shading to the edges. Just so you know, if anyone is interested in that kit for these dies, it is still available, and as always, I'll have it linked down below in the video description. I'm going to prop my flowers up using some double-sided foam squares, and that's what's going to cover and be on this front flap hinge or panel, whatever we wanted to call that. And then once my flowers are set in place, I'm going to then tuck in all of this greenery around it. So I'm almost making like a bouquet. And that's kind of what I saw. You know, I thought of wedding celebration. So with the tassel coming down, you know, with the bouquets of today, they usually have the ribbons that are wrapped around the stems. So you get this really thick handle, and then there's usually some charms or ribbons coming from it. So that's kind of what I was going for here. I don't know if I achieved it, but I think it's different anyway. So let's go with that. So I think with these frames and these flowers, it just adds a really nice touch, just to have this pop of green that's coming off of the tan cardstock that I used, and the petal pink, I believe is what it's called, or powder pink, from oh my goodness, I forgot the name of the company. Oh my, oh well, I believe that's what it's called, but it's almost like it's a different shade of pink. It's not a bright pink. So now I'm just using my liquid adhesive and setting in my leaves, making sure that they come above. They're going to curl, and they're just going to let I'm letting the cardstock do what it needs to do. I'm not adding any foam squares to the greens that are coming in from behind these roses. But I do like filling up that area. Again, going for that bouquet look, to have that filled. So you can see with this, by pulling on the tassel, that lifts up the front, but yet you do also have the inside of the card that you can write a message to your recipient as well. So I do hope you enjoy this project using the PA Scribe nesting frame by Paul Antonio. If you should have any questions, make sure you leave those down below, and I will make sure I'll get right back to you All the products that I used in this video will be listed down below as well in the video description. I hope everyone is having a great day, and thank you so much for stopping by and just taking the time to watch this video. I hope I showed you a trick or two. If you haven't already, I'd love for you to subscribe. Make sure you ring the bell because you don't want to miss the next video. Again, I hope everyone's having a great day. But also remember what's most important. Always be creative.